All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar today. I just hit record. So if you want to rewatch today or if you want to share it with somebody in your office, I'll go ahead and post the recording of today's webinar as well as copies of the presentations on our website. I'll send you the link this afternoon. Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle Coco. I'm the Communications Director at SUSTA. I'm the one who's been emailing with you all about today's webinar. Thanks for joining. I'm going to give a brief overview of SUSTA, and then we'll dive into our feature presentation. We'll hear from Alison, George, and Heidi Kim, SUSTA's consultants in Toronto. They are with Argyle Public Relationships, and they will give us an in-depth look at exporting to Canada. And then we will have 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. Everybody's phones are muted, so just type in your questions into the chat or Q&A box, and feel free to do that anytime during the presentation, and we'll just go ahead and answer all questions at the end. So, like I said, I will be very brief. SUSTA receives the bulk of our funding through the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service. The funding streams that our programs are funded through are the Market Access Program and the New Agricultural Trade Promotion Program. And through those funding streams, we implement a global events program where companies who are part of SUSTA can meet foreign buyers at events here and abroad. And we have a second program called 50% Cost Share where SUSTA can reimburse companies half of certain international marketing expenses. So our global events, we have three types of events. Inbound trade missions are where U.S. companies can meet foreign buyers here in the U.S. So for $25, a company can sign up to participate and, let's say, meet with Mexican buyers who are traveling to Houston or to Atlanta to meet with our companies. So it's kind of like speed dating. It's a great, inexpensive way to meet foreign buyers and to sample your products. Outbound trade missions are kind of similar in that there is the speed dating component, except the U.S. company is traveling abroad to the foreign country. So in addition to those one-on-one meetings, there are also tours, I was a little lost for words, tours of the groceries and convenience stores and the venues where your products could be on the shelf. And we also have in-depth market presentations from either consultants or the Foreign Agricultural Service officers in that country. So you really get a better feel for the country and what it would be to export there. Those are also fairly inexpensive. They are, if you get the early bird special, they're $400. Otherwise, they're $600. And included in that fee, in addition to all the meetings, is either your round-trip international airfare or your lodging for the duration of the mission. So definitely something to look into. And then, of course, we have pavilions at international trade shows all over the world. Companies can exhibit in our pavilion. You get your own booth space, as well as a bunch of other perks, interpreters if you need them, and the assistance of SUSTA from the minute you sign up through the end of the trade show. So just really good ways to meet qualified foreign buyers. To see all of our events, you would just go to our website and click on the Events tab, and you'll see the list of upcoming events. And if you click on any of those events, you'd see descriptions, dates, fees, location, of course, everything you would need to know. So take a look at all of our events. And then our 50% cost share program is where SUSTA can reimburse half of certain marketing and promotional activities. This is the full list of things that we can reimburse. I'm not going to go into all of them right now because I know we're all here to hear from Heidi and Alison, but just so you know, it's quite a robust list of marketing and promotional activities targeting the foreign countries that you're interested in. So, for instance, advertising in a foreign market, in-store demonstrations, that would be like sampling your product in a foreign grocery, travel expenses when you're exhibiting at international trade shows or outbound trade missions, you name it. So this program is a little bit more in depth. You have to apply. So the first step with cost share is the U.S. company would first develop their international marketing strategy on their own. Then they would come to SUSTA and apply for the 50% cost share program. There's a $250 application fee as well as a 6% administrative fee on the amount that you request in reimbursement. The minimum that we ask a company request for the year is $2,500 in reimbursement, meaning you're spending $5,000 in those eligible expenses. And then the maximum annual request in reimbursement is $300,000 for the market access program or for cost share through the agricultural trade promotion program, which is our new funding stream. So just remember, though, that you have to apply first, and then you go out and do the marketing, the approved marketing promotions that are in your application. Then you collect all of the required documents, submit those to SUSTA, then you get reimbursed. So just to dispel any myths, it is not a grant. You apply first, then you do the marketing and promotions, and then you send in your receipts, et cetera, to get reimbursed. To get started with SUSTA, you create your My SUSTA account, which you all have. You let us know which of the two programs you're interested in. So if you only selected one of those programs, then you would only be reviewed by the program you selected. So it's always a good thought to go back into your account and make sure that you're signing up for the programs that you're interested in. And then every August 1st, your account will go into a pending state, and you'll see a little pop-up like you see on my screen, just asking you to recertify your account details for the following year. So every August 1st, we open the application process for the next year. And we just like to confirm each year that our companies are eligible to participate. Again, it's a federally funded program, so just want to make sure that that we are all abiding by the rules. So that is SUSTA in a very quick nutshell. And now I'll turn it over to Alison and Heidi. Just give me a second. Alison.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. We're just going to put our presentation up on the screen. I'm Alison George from Argyle Public Relationships in Toronto, and myself and Heidi Kim will be giving you a market introduction to our work here, with Heidi talking a little bit about specific programming we're doing on behalf of the Southern United States Trade Association, but I will start by talking about the Canadian market. So thank you for your time. And again, to reiterate what Danielle said, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Heidi, Danielle, and myself will be all available in the last 15 minutes, and you'll see our contact information will be on the final screen. And by all means, feel free to reach out directly to us if you have questions about our market or our programming. So let's start with a big picture overview of Canada. And would you forgive me briefly, Danielle, are you able to see that presentation clearly?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Sure. So very good. Canada is about 1/10 of the population size of the United States, and you can see from the red and pink dots at the bottom of the map that most of our population is clustered next to the U.S. border. And as we're expecting a big snowstorm tomorrow, you can appreciate that we like to stay where it's a little bit warmer, which is the south, though we have populations across the east and west. More than half of Canadians live in Ontario and Quebec, which are on the east side of Canada, and that's good news for SUSTA states because it's a more direct access point to your states, to those highly populated regions. And we are, just out of interest, the world's second largest country in terms of area, and we are a bilingual country, primarily English, though the province of Quebec is primarily French. Why would you consider Canada? Well, it is the leading destination for U.S. agricultural exports. We are right above the SUSTA regions, and particularly if you're new to export, it's a pretty low barrier to entry for most products. I did have the question once about our transportation infrastructure, and it is extensive. We are served by rail, transport. We have a wide network of highways, flights. The only area that you'd be challenged is in the far north, but the population is so small that you wouldn't really be exporting up there anyway. We have a stable economy, first world country. Culturally, there's a lot of commonalities, though there are some subtle differences when you're working with a Canadian, and we can certainly help interpret that for you if you run across that. And when it comes to picking foods from a particular country of origin, we Canadians pick U.S. as the first choice. I think that's based on our faith in the quality of the products coming from the U.S. We have trust. And there are other programs that support your opportunities to export, such as the 50% cost share program that Danielle mentioned, and other opportunities that are funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and SUSTA that can help you as an export make it up to this country. I'm going to talk a moment about trade. Oh, yes,
sorry
Danielle.
to interrupt.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to let you know there's like a 20-second lag, so maybe start, advance your slide, anyway.
Thank you.
Yep, anyway,
I will do so. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sure,
Thank you. So with trade, we did go through, of course, the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, and it's now called the USMCA, though interestingly, in Canada, we call it the CAUSM, I think, or CAMUS. We just reverse it. But it is a trade agreement that has been ratified by both Canada and the United States. We're just waiting for the formalities around it. This slide is talking a little bit about agricultural exports from the U.S. Now, this data is from 2017, so we have seen some movement. I know that China and Canada are very close to being the U.S. Is #1 U.S. agricultural export recipient. We kind of go back and forth on that number, but back in 2017, which is the most recent data that's available, Canada was the #1 export partner with the United States, and of course the ratification of the USMCA will help continue to have that relationship remain strong. We have put up a map. I know this is difficult to read, but it does show, and it is available on our Agriculture and Agri-Food website. It shows the degree to which various states export products, agri-food products, to Canada, and the degree to which various U.S. states import agri-food products from Canada. And the area that I think is most interesting is in the bottom left-hand quadrant of this graph, where it talks about really we have a very balanced trade relationship. I mean, I know we're talking about billions of dollars, but about $25 billion worth of agriculture products come from the U.S. to Canada, and about $22.3 billion come from Canada to the United States. So that says that we have a very balanced, very collaborative export relationship. And you can dig down deeper into the various states if that's of interest to you to understand what it's like in your particular region. In terms of what is the most exported product from the U.S. to Canada, we do export, as you can imagine, fresh fruits and vegetables. We have a limited growing season for on-field fruits and vegetables, so we do have a pretty robust greenhouse market. We do import a lot of products, citrus products, apples, you name it. So much is coming from the United States into Canada. Second in that list is meat and poultry. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the challenges in that category, but we do have, particularly with beef, a very fluid border. All parts of beef production go back and forth over the border, from feeder lots to processing to growing lots, back and forth. We also have a lot of processed food coming in, both prepared foods and fruits and vegetables, snack foods, etc. Now, we're going to attempt to show a video. Please know that it is just music, so if you can't hear it properly, then you can simply watch the images to make this point.
Heidi, it's not really working properly.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know if maybe we want to pause it. Yeah, and I'll send the link to the video to everybody. Yep, yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the attempt there, but we'll get back to the presentation at hand here. So I'm going to take a moment to talk about the kinds of issues and things that are essentially on our mind here in Canada right now. We've presented this before, and we've taken a moment to talk about cannabis. You may or may not know that cannabis is now legally available in Canada. It's something we're watching, but we're not really seeing trade opportunities at this point, though, and I don't believe there are any companies in that sector on the phone. But it is something that we're watching closely because it will be an opportunity. Safe Food for Canadians regulations is something that has come into effect earlier this year at the beginning of January. Basically what that is more stringent oversight over products that are for sale in Canada, regardless of the country of origin. And it just means that our Canadian inspectors are being more vigilant around paperwork. They're requiring more credentials to ensure products are traceable, more transparency into who the brokers, the distributors, and the importers are, and that they are located here in Canada. So where this comes to play is as you develop partnerships or relationships with brokers and distributors, or you begin to prepare your paperwork, we'll just have to ensure that it adheres to these regulations called Safe Food for Canadian regulations. It's very similar to the level of regulation that is required in the United States to sell your food products. So to be honest with you, we don't see this as a hurdle, particularly for companies that are entering the market for the first time. If you do encounter a challenge related to the Safe Food for Canadians Act, we're certainly here, as is the Foreign Agricultural Services Office, here to assist and help you with in regard to that. Secondly, again, early this year, we launched in Canada our new Canada's Food Guide. It is similar to what I believe you call in the United States your food pyramid, and forgive me if I have the wrong expression. What was interesting for us is the way that proteins were portrayed. And it used to be that we had a category for meat and meat alternatives and a category for dairy, but now those have been combined, and the food guide is essentially saying, you know, eat more fruits and vegetables, choose whole grain foods, and eat protein foods, and make water your drink of choice. So it's just, of course, not everyone adheres to food guide eating. It's just indicative of the healthy, the goal to have a healthy eating community coming from the government that is putting forth this food guide. Some of the challenges that we encounter is, you know, when we were in the thick of the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, the U.S. did announce some tariffs on some steel and aluminum products that were very high. And as a result, Canada did some countermeasures, or in other words, surtaxes, on some other products from the U.S. And this is not yet resolved. We still have these tariffs in place. It didn't impact the final negotiation of the USMCA, but it has meant that some products have a higher a surtax on them, whereas other products don't. And we have had some buyers and distributors in this market kind of flag that, hey, if you're going to try and import your product or export your product to Canada at this time, you need to be prepared for these increased prices in order to, you know, they're not going to pay the surtax. They expect the producer to pay that surtax. And some of the selected goods would include, for example, milk products, coffees, chocolate, some frozen products, some confectionery products. But of interest, there's some definite confusion about what has a tariff on it and what doesn't. For example, Heinz ketchup has got a tariff on it, but mustard does not. So if you're importing mustard, it doesn't. And that was just a little wrangling because from what I understand, the vast majority of mustard manufactured around the world, the actual mustard seed is grown in Canada. So there's a little politics at play there. But we're here to help interpret this for you. Now, as a Canadian consumer, honestly, this has been quite, it really hasn't seemed to impact us directly. There may be some. We keep hearing that grocery store prices are going up. They probably have flowed through, but it hasn't been shocking to your mainstream consumer. We're not all up in arms because our soup is more expensive, but it is something that our companies who are importing into Canada from the United States have had to address from a pricing perspective. Another area that is a challenge in this market is we do have a few products that have tariff quotas on them. So the three categories are poultry, eggs, and dairy. We have worked with all three kinds of groups and producers. There are some ways around this. For example, if you do have a dairy product, it's a matter of finding a dairy buyer who has quota and allows that dairy buyer to import some products. So it's not to say that all dairy products in Canada are exclusively Canadian. It just means you need to be working with a buyer who has quota and is able to bring some up. And those rules have loosened a little bit under the USMCA, but not a huge amount. We're still seeing some challenges there. Another non-tariff barrier that you might run across is we do have a relatively consolidated retail market. So you might find overall, and you should really recognize this, that when you export your products, it's expensive. You have other costs you have to incur. There may be listing fees to have something put in a grocery store. There may be fees you have to pay to your broker. Heidi is going to talk about this a little bit more. But we do have a relatively consolidated large-scale grocery industry here. So, for example, I heard the president of Loblaw speak about a week ago, and she said that 90% of Canadians can get to a Loblaw store or one of its affiliated brands within 10 minutes. And I think that's remarkable. So you can just see how widely dispersed Loblaw is and how important it is. So that's just something to bear in mind, that there may be some costs. So please, when you create your costing model, we will work with you to help interpret and understand some of those costs that you have to consider. Another barrier or something you need to be aware of is that in Canada, we do have different labeling and packaging regulations to which you would have to adhere. Some companies have been able to sticker over their product, but that isn't the ideal solution. If you really are committed to the market, you want to invest in updating your packaging to reflect the Canadian requirements. And this can manifest itself in a few notable ways. Our nutrition facts label is bilingual and in metric, and some of our daily value percentages differ. Some of our nutrition claims differ. So you may be making a claim on your product in the United States that is not allowable here in Canada or has to be phrased differently. And this is, again, an area that we want to draw your attention to. And also point out that if you are interested and you have applied for the 50% cost share funding, adapting your label for this market is something that you can get support for, and we can certainly put you in touch with either consultants who specialize in label adaptation or the website that will walk you through it very clearly if you wish to take that on yourself. We also have a little bit of allergen labeling that will come to play. We do have some other restrictions about alcohol, and I know we do have some alcohol brands on this call. We just have, in some provinces, more of a monopoly system, and we have to work with a very regulated liquor control board in order to trade product. But we have been conducting some missions and building relationships for wine, beer, and spirits companies from the U.S. in Canada. So we're making inroads, and Heidi will talk about one of the events. So I'm going to turn it over to Heidi to tell you a little bit more about how you can become successful in Canada.
So some of the key facts to know when you're considering Canada, a lot of these Alison has already talked about. But first, although we do share very similar cultures, language, there is a border in between us, which means we have our own set of regulations and requirements that you need to adhere to. Sometimes U.S. companies consider Canada as just part of their domestic market strategy, where, you know, in fact, we are a different market, and as such, it requires a lot more than simply shipping your product up north. The second point is that we are a highly consolidated market, as Alison mentioned, especially when it comes to the retail industry. So along with the three retailers that, the grocery retailers that Alison mentioned, plus Costco and Walmart, those five retailers own about 50% of the market share in Canada, which means less or fewer buyers to work with. And as a result, the buyers do rely a bit more on brokers and distributors to help them choose new products for the market. Next, you'll have to be ready to make investments in Canada. As Alison mentioned, the labeling and packaging requirements, to adhere to that, you will, if you do have packaged food, you will have to make changes which can require some investment. And then the partners that you're working with, depending on who you're working with, will also require some investment there as well. And then finally, but not least, we are a very sophisticated market with a good selection of products already available. So knowing what makes your product unique and how you can stand out in the market is also very important. Roadmap for entry. You've obviously made the successful first step of contacting SUSTA and your state department. You know, SUSTA and the state offer some wonderful programs. We'll be going through the list of Canadian activities that we're working on today in a bit, but make sure you do take advantage of the resources and the programs that are out there for you. Next, research the competitive marketplace. You know, as mentioned, a lot of the products that you might regard as competitors are already in the market. So knowing where they're selling at, knowing what their pricing strategy is like, can also help you strategize for the market as well. The next important step will be to locate a Canadian partner, whether it be a broker or a distributor, to help you navigate the market. And then, you know, learn about the government standards and regulations that might apply to your product. It might not be, you might not have any specific regulations that you have to adhere to if you have like certain products like a packaged or processed food that's geared towards, say, the food service industry. In that case, you won't be required to do a rigorous packaging or labeling change. But if you are targeting the retail industry, it's definitely something that you'll have to look into. Partners, the main difference between a food broker and a distributor is the broker is an agent for hire, so they don't usually physically own the product. They act as your arms and legs and feet in the market, and their primary goal is to help sell your product. They often don't take on any products that are regarded as a competitor to yours, and they just generally deal with fewer suppliers and products. The fee structure for these types of brokers is very common in Canada for a lot of them to charge a retainer in the beginning to help set up the account, and that can range from a few $100s to a few $1,000s a month, and we've seen it from, last from a few months to maybe even over a year, again, depending on the partner and your product. Once there's some sales achieved at a certain level, then this will often change into a percentage of sales, and again, this can depend on the broker, but more or less around 5% is what we have been hearing. Distributors, on the other hand, they physically take possession of the product. They work as more a buy and sell model. They carry a larger range of SKUs, so maybe up to a few 100,000 SKUs, and which could often include a competitor of yours as well. Margins range from 25 to 35% for distributors, and we've recently seen a bit of a hybrid model where a broker will also kind of act as a distributor, or will have a third-party warehouse where they will bring in the products physically as well. But then when it comes to like the actual distribution to the smaller stores, and they'll work with other distributors in the market. Some of the costs to consider, these are just a list of items that you might want to consider that impact your cost. And you might not necessarily be dealing with this on your end because you'll sell your product to, say, an importer at a FOB price, but these are some costs or items that influence the end price of your product. And if you see in this product journey chart, this is, just a rough guideline, and this assumes that you are working with an importer or a distributor. In this case, the distributor will be asking you or the supplier for an FOB price, which when you are giving that FOB price to the distributor, some of the things you'll have to consider are your own costs. Of course, the cost to manufacture the product, but if you are paying a broker, if you need to ship the product to a certain point, if you need to pay listing fees, these are all some things that you'll have to take into consideration when you're providing that FOB price. And, most importantly, you have to make sure that you are making a profit for yourself before you provide that price to the distributor. The distributor will then take that FOB price, add their own cost, margin, and sell it to the retailer, and then the retailer will then add their own costs and margin and sell it to the customer. So it's after you do all of this, add in all of the calculations, sometimes, a product that's selling in the U.S. market for $1 can easily be sold at close to $3 in this market. So it's just, some cost to consider when you're working in the Canadian market. Some documentations that are required for now, NAFTA certificate is still valid, and it's what helps bring in a lot of products duty-free into the Canadian market. And then depending on your product, if you have meat products, health certificates or other federal government forms will be required. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency has a site called the Automated Import Reference System, where if you type in your HS code or product description, it gives you a list of products or documents that need to accompany your shipment when it's crossing the border. So let's look at what consumers want in the Canadian market. like anywhere else in the world, Canada is dealing with aging population, baby boomers, millennials are rising as a very important consumer target in this market. We're overall dealing with this shifting demographic. And our Canada is ethnically very diverse, as it is in the U.S. as well. These kinds of shifting demographics are influencing Canadians' interest in health and well-being, so they're really looking at products that are healthy and good for you. And the younger millennial generations are especially interested in environmental stewardship. They want to know the story behind their products, how their products are being processed. They want to support local. They also want to know that they're contributing to some of the environment, or contributing to resolving some of the environmental issues that we're facing these days. On the flip side of that, consumers are also looking for convenient products, fresh but convenient, ready-to-eat options, as well as other healthy snack options and smaller single portions as well. Some best opportunities when it comes to produce, again, conveniently packaged products, so salad mixes or vegetable trays do well, snackables. Organic is one area where until a couple of years ago we actually thought it was going to be a fad, but when we were talking to a produce importer recently, it's quite a large importer, and they mentioned that they're looking to expand their organic line. So it seems like it's a strong trend that's staying for a while. When it comes to beer, wine, and spirits, again, this is another category where the market is very sophisticated, consumers are very well educated, so it's highly competitive. Consumers are looking for products that they know are doing, not only consumers, but buyers are looking for products that they know do well in other markets, products that have good ratings, good social followings, products that have won accolades. These are all ones that, or particular products that the liquor boards are looking for when they're making their procurement decisions. Value-added products, the healthy, clean trend is strong here. So products that have less ingredients, products that are clean, products that are low in sodium or sugar are all products that could potentially do well in this market. For seafood, sustainability is a strong keyword, especially when you're targeting retail chains in Canada. They are looking for certifications, so Marine Stewardship Council certifications, Ocean-wise are just some examples of certifications that they might be looking at. Next, we'll look at the events that we're organizing this year as part of the Canada Initiative. The first event that we're doing is the Canada Outbound Trade Mission. This is an event that we're organizing in collaboration with other state regional trade groups. It's happening in early April, and there are three main components to this activity. The first is a series of presentations. So the Foreign Agricultural Service will be providing a market overview quite similar to the presentation that we're currently doing. And then we'll be bringing in a labeling consultant to do a presentation, a more in-depth presentation on labeling regulations for Canada. And then there's going to be a market research company that will be coming in to talk specifically about Quebec and how that market might be a bit different from the rest of Canada. The mission is taking place in two cities, Toronto and Montreal, and we're going to be organizing retail store tours in both of these markets. We're also going to be coordinating one-on-one speed dating style meetings in both of these markets as well. Between all of the state regional trade groups for this mission, we have about 30 companies participating and probably a lot of agents buyers, brokers, and distributors that will be participating in the meetings as well. The next mission we're working on is the Canada Inbound Beer, Wine, and Spirits Trade Mission to Kentucky, Tennessee, and Georgia. It's happening the same time that the Outbound Trade Mission is going on. We are going to be having about 3 agents, and the primary component of this will be to visit the facilities in these 3 states. We're also organizing tasting sessions for some of the companies that are located a bit further away. The next activity we have on the agenda is CL Canada. This is the only trade show that we're doing in Canada this year. It's a great event for value-added products. We've also seen produce companies participate, meat companies, seafood companies. The primary component of this trade show obviously is to get booths, and for $1,500 you can get an inline booth, and that will give you some basic furniture and signage. The day before the first day of the show, we're organizing retail store tours. We will also be coordinating some matchmaking meetings with brokers and distributors in the market, and the Foreign Agricultural Service will also organize a market presentation and a labeling presentation. So it's basically getting all of the components of the outbound trade mission, but for the Toronto market only this year, but also having an opportunity to exhibit at a trade show where you will have a face-to-face opportunity with some retailers in the market. For this particular activity, we're actually still in the process of recruiting. So if you are interested and want to know more about this, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we would be happy to review the opportunity in further detail with you. The next activity we have is the inbound trade mission to the Summer Fancy Food Show in Louisiana. This is geared towards more value-added specialty gourmet products. We're looking to recruit about 3 to 4 brokers or distributors to visit Louisiana, Baton Rouge, a few days before the Summer Fancy Food Show, and then we'll be heading over to New York to attend the Summer Fancy Food Show. On setup day, we'll be organizing speed dating style matchmaking meetings at one of the meeting rooms at the Jacob Javits Center where the Fancy Food Show takes place. So even if you're not planning to exhibit at the show, if you're planning to walk the show and will be there or can be there the day before the show, then this will be a great opportunity for you to meet with some Canadian contacts. And for $25, you'll also have an opportunity to meet with buyers from other markets. We understand that Europe is also going to be part of this mission as well. Our final activity of the year is the inbound produce trade mission to Maryland and North Carolina. The primary component of this is to visit the growers in these 2 states, but if you do have produce products and are in a state nearby and are willing to drive to any of these states, then we can also hold some one-on-one meetings with you at a hotel or another location. For this event, it's going to be happening in mid-August, and we're looking to recruit about 3 importers that are licensed to import produce products from the U.S. So that concludes our presentation. We hope it was informative. Our contact information is included in this last slide, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, and we look forward to hopefully seeing all of you at some point this year or next year.
Great. Thank you, guys. We have a few questions that came in through the Q&A chat box. The first one, and this will go to Heidi and Alison, who can help us find out if our products have a surtax?
We can help find.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there is a detailed list. In fact, you can follow up by sending us your product, and we can certainly tell you whether or not it does. And bear in mind that we do anticipate that these tariffs will eventually go away. It's probably a short-term point that was done to kind of agitate a little around the North American Free Trade Agreement renegotiation. So I don't think they're long-standing, but by all means, send us your product and we can let you know. In fact, I think we can also send a list through of products that do have a surtax, which you can send to Danielle for distribution to participants.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And that same person was asking about the quotas, and if you guys would be the right person to help determine if a particular product like prepared meals with cooked poultry would be subject to quotas, where they would find that information.
Yes, we would be the ones that can help them navigate. For prepared foods containing poultry, I think we'll have to have more of an in-depth discussion and understand what exactly the product is so that we can help look up whether or not they would be subject to quota.
All right, thank you. And then we have another question about the distributor costs. They seem to be 4 to 5 times higher in Canada than the U.S. Is this a posted range, or does this really apply to distribution to major retailers? In the U.S., some distributors will have similar posted markups, but actuals are much less.
Yeah, so that's a very, what we provided you is a very general what we've been hearing, but it's not, I guess, the law of what they charge, and it'll depend on the distributor, yes, and which retailer they're targeting. Yeah, so that'll all really depend on the actual partner that you're working with, of course, the volume that they're purchasing, the volume that they're selling. So there's many factors.
And the uniqueness of the product that you're offering. So if we have a distributor that has a retail partner here that's desperately seeking a particular item that you can supply, then that distributor is going to be working on a lower margin. So it is a personal negotiated relationship between yourself and your distributor or broker, which we are certainly helpful in the process of introduction, but you'll have to come to those terms with that individual who represents you.
Got it. All right. For the produce trade mission that will be in North Carolina, is that a hard limit on fresh produce, or are products like organic and fresh beverages included?
For this particular mission, because we are looking at bringing in importers that specifically deal with fresh produce, yes, that will be more limited to fresh produce. But there are other activities, for instance, like CL Canada, that they might want to, this company might want to consider, where value-added produce products can work at CL Canada as well. Sorry, cost.
Yep. How do we get a quota for wholesale dairy products?
So it's not that a company would get a quota. You would work with an importer who has quota. So it would be a matter of aligning with an importer who has available quota and is seeking that particular kind of product. And again, this is when it gets to the dairy, poultry, eggs, it gets a bit more complex. So we might want to have an offline conversation around that. But we do work with aligning such products with buyers, brokers who have quota availability. Do you want to add anything onto that, Heidi?
Yeah, so I guess how the quota works is, the government annually reviews, I guess, the list of products that are available in the Canadian market, and then they determine how much product can be imported in that specific category. And then importers, distributors, again, this can depend on the category, whether it's dairy or poultry or eggs. but there will be different types of categories of quota holders, and everybody will own a different amount of quota. And so, as Alison mentioned, if there is a company that is working with that particular product, then we will primarily look for importers or Canadian companies that own this quota and see how we can align them with our SUSTA companies.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, the next question, will this presentation be available after the webinar concludes? Yes, I'm going to post a recording of the webinar as well as the presentations so that everybody can access them through your MySUSTA account. You would just log in, and there's a little tab that says Webinars. If you click on that, you'll be able to access PDF of the presentation and, again, the recording as well. And, of course, this is the email addresses for Alison and Heidi are on the screen right now. So, and you have mine. This is Danielle talking from SUSTA. So if more questions come up, or if you have questions that are really more particular to your product type, please reach out to any of us directly, and we're happy to help. Canada is our friendly neighbor to the north, but obviously there's a lot of different intricacies with tariffs and quotas and brokers, distributors, that things that need to be navigated. So as you approach exporting to Canada, please use us and Argyle as a resource. Ladies, did you have anything else to add?
We hope you'll consider Canada.
Fantastic. Yes, so thank you very much. And sorry, everybody, that there was a little bit of a lag. Sometimes tech issues happen. So anyway, but we hope that you enjoyed today. Alison and Heidi, thank you very much. It was incredibly informative, especially as things are changing all the time. So it's good to get up to date on our exports to Canada. And thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.